Here we are with Edgar Ramirez.
Exactly.
The man who his performance as Carlos, the incredible terrorist of the 70s and the 80s, is a gargantuan performance in a 6-hour movie by Olivier Assayas, has been compared to Marlon Brando. It's an astonishing piece of work, and what really is surprising is, even though you've been working out of Venezuela in international films, Edgar, I mean, this is really your big breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
I looked up your credits, and you were in The Bourne Identity.
Yeah.
Did you die in that movie?
No.
Who were you in that?
I was Paz, who's the nemesis to Matt Damon's character, to Bourne.
You were the bad
third
guy.
installment. Yeah, the bad guy in Ultimatum.
Oh, the third one.
Yeah,
okay.
The one who didn't die, so.
Oh, okay. And then you were in Domino as the lover of this tragic woman who was a model.
Bounty hunter. Yeah.
Yes.
Bounty hunter.
Yes. And that movie nobody saw.
Yeah.
Virtually disappeared.
Only on the other side of the ocean.
Oh, it wasn't
in France and in some parts of Europe did very well.
Tony Scott is an auteur that people actually go see his movies.
Well, I mean, like movies like Domino, like True Romance. I mean, are very popular in Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The Quentin Tarantino movie, True Romance.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So for this, when somebody approached you, Olivier Assayas, I would presume, and said, "I want you to play Carlos," what was your initial reaction?
Well, I was very excited because I had always been a huge fan of Olivier. I think he's a genius. He's a tremendously talented director who has a very, very profound and honest fascination for human nature. He's a guy who's absolutely unapologetic in terms of telling stories, in terms of approaching human condition. And the fact that a guy like that would be interested in telling such an extravagant and dramatic story about such an extravagant character, it caught my attention immediately. And of course, I read the script and I loved it. I think it is a script full of nuances and contradictions and yeah.
This is a man who was a hardline revolutionary, who comes out of, it wasn't Venezuela, was it?
Yes, Venezuela.
He was Venezuelan like you are Venezuelan. Yeah. So he comes out of Venezuela, he is in France and in England operating was he trained in Moscow?
He was more than trained, he went to university. He went to Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow. And then he dropped out when he realized that the Soviet plans were just as the American plans at that time. I mean, it was just a Soviet imperialism, a Soviet intention to just indoctrinate people and then send them back to their countries. And he was very committed to the internationalism, and then he dropped out. And then while being in Moscow, he got in touch with the Palestinian revolution, and that's how they got connected. And then he started to become a pro-Palestinian militant.
What's interesting is how many failures Carlos had as a terrorist, and yet his reputation never suffered from his screw-ups.
Yeah.
So in a way, it could have been a black comedy, but this is not a black comedy.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, by seeing the failures of Carlos and the people around him, I think that watching the movie, you realize how that there were human beings behind those terrorists. I mean, we always have this tendency, this perception of either militaries on one side or terrorists on one side, that they're this type of androids who don't feel, don't screwed up, who don't fear, etc., etc. And then you see these guys, doing just, human failures. So it kind of gives certain layer of humanity to these people.
Well, he's not a robot. He's a lover, if anything.
Actually, yeah.
He seduces women everywhere he goes, uses them to his own ends, and he's ruthless. He's he's really what we'd call a hard-boiled killer. He kills without remorse completely.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's extremely sensitive. He's extremely intelligent and charismatic and charming. And I think that's the key for this character to be so so interesting, or at least that's what caught my attention immediately.
There's a scene that people can't forget when you see this movie, and that's when Carlos walks around naked and admires himself in the mirror, feels his genitals, is just like the proud peacock or the cat that just ate the canary. What this comes after what? That he is so content with himself in his apartment.
I think that it could be endless interpretations to that scene, and I think probably that's why it is so powerful, and I immediately got it and agreed with Olivia when I read the scene, because it establishes, the narcissistic element to his persona that will and would define many things in his life, because at the end I think that the glory and the tragedy of Carlos was the character. I'm not talking about the guy who's in jail now in France. I'm talking about the character that we built and showed in the movie. At the end, he was a guy obsessed with fame and recognition, and that narcissistic element to his personality, gets completely established in that scene. Beyond all the self-contempt and all that, it's.
And then, what did Edgar do in the course of this movie? Because we see him nude later, and he's got this huge Buddha belly on him. And the Palestinian, is it Walid, says to him, you look a wreck, you've got to get yourself in shape, and then at the end of his life, we found out it's true that he had liposuction. He went in for plastic surgery.
We didn't work much.
Yes. So, did you actually? Is that like a pregnancy belly, or did you actually gain 30 pounds for this?
I gained.
You did this?
35 pounds.
Didn't you worry about ruining your fantastic physique? All for your art?
I mean, well, that's what this is all about. I mean, it's not about me. It's about the character. I think that as actors, I mean, once you commit to a role and once you commit to telling a story, then you have to go all the way. And it was very clear that I had to put on weight, not only because the guy. I mean, like when you look and watch documentation available on Carlos. I mean, at the end of his life, he was fat. He was very fat. Not only because of that, also because it was important to show the emotional and ideological degradation also through his body. I think that his body becomes a metaphor, not only of the physical, obviously physical degradation, but also the emotional and ideological degradation through the deterioration of his body.
So how does an actor do that? I mean, but I mean, do you take 3 weeks off at the end of the shoot and everybody says, we now wait for Edgar to go gain 35 pounds?
Yeah, I started to. I mean, actually, I realized, and that's it for everybody here. For example, if I eat this cookie, it's not gonna show up until 4 days or 5 days from now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's why when you come back from vacations, then the last day or the 2 days before you're coming back home, you are perfect. You're okay. I mean, you don't feel much difference in your body. And then when you get back to the office, and then suddenly, like the third day, business day, then suddenly you feel like, man, I put on weight.